I personally don't think that it's a new Lehman moment because the international imbalances are less bad than they were in 2008. In 2008, the United States was running a gigantic balance of payments deficit, which had been around 6% of GDP, and this was completely unsustainable. Now this has been much more cut back to about half that. So I could be wrong. These are probability things. So I think this is going to be a bad crisis, but not as bad as 2008. But we will have to see. But what is very clear is that this was entirely predictable. I mean, I can tell, I've been actually tweeting, putting out on Weibo the analysis of what has been happening before this broke out. It sounds slightly technical, but it's a question of what is called the inversion of the yield curve. It means that the short-term interest rates in the United States become higher than long-term runs. This is very, very rare. It only occurs about once every 10 years, and it started to occur last July. And therefore, you had, on the one hand, propaganda by the United States saying that the situation was very good, and President Biden was doing press conferences to say how wonderful the situation was. But if you looked at the money, as opposed to the words, something was going very seriously wrong. And it's been doing so since about July last year, and then it exploded just during the last weekend. And this is showing you that the situation in the US economy is not stable, and it's going to have negative consequences, particularly in the struggle against inflation. The Fed is going to be more worried that its increase in its interest rates is going to lead to a very disastrous crisis in the financial system. It's going to be more cautious, and that means it's going to be more difficult to control inflation. And we know over the medium term, inflation is one of the most destabilizing things you can possibly have in the economy. And I don't think it'll be as bad as Lehman, but it is going to be negative from the point of the long-term stability of the US economy, because it's going to make it more difficult to control inflation within the US. One of the things that has become very dramatic is, of course, the Western economies have passed through two very severe crises in the last, in slightly over a decade. First, the international financial crisis, and then the very deleterious economic effects of the pandemic. And now we have to see, we are at the moment in a new banking crisis in the United States, literally as we speak. Having proclaimed that their economy was very stable, suddenly you have, in one weekend, the second and third largest bank collapses in US history, which indicated things were not as stable as was claimed. So these state companies in China, because they can move their level of investment up and down, gives China much, much stronger anti-crisis measures that it can take than other countries. The key to the success of China's economy is recent one is the structure which was created in 1978 and which has continued to the present day and which has been maintained, which is the combination of, on the one hand, very large companies which are owned by the state and which provide a solid backbone for the economy, and incidentally give it tremendous anti-crisis potential.